In the news this week, calls continue to raise the Newstart allowance as a parliamentary inquiry is launched into the rate.
Kids Helpline overwhelmed by volume of calls, with the Greens pushing for more government funding.
The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, addressed the Liberal Party state conference following recent election victory.
And a record number of female sporting events to lure more tourists to Western Australia.
Plus an exclusive interview with Federal Minister Michaelia Cash on Part 4 of the Left Behind series.
That's coming up.
This is the Evening News with Ivan Lung and Danielle Staniskov.
Good evening. Centrelink's Newstart allowance is back on the Federal Parliament's agenda with a new inquiry into the payment rate, as calls continue for it to be increased. In WA, Premier Mark McGowan says an increase would benefit unemployed people struggling in the state. But the federal government claims jobs needs to be the focus. Nelson Liu begins our coverage.
The federal government payment is supporting Australia's job seekers, and WA's government believes Newstart allowance needs to be higher.
I'd like to see it increase.
The government says Australians having trouble getting a job should be adequately supported while they look for work, including in WA's struggling economy.
Otherwise, people live in poverty. When you live in poverty, you create crime, you create terrible issues.
The payment hasn't risen since 1994, but in federal parliament, all sides of politics want it raised from its current rate of $40 a day. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says no increases, but an inquiry has been launched after crossbenchers including WA Liberal Dean Smith sided with Labor and the Greens over the issue. The state government says raising Newstart will help people who need it the most, but the federal government believes the focus should be getting people into jobs.
The government's not saying that it's easy to live on Newstart, but the focus needs to be on getting people off Newstart, off welfare and into work.
The inquiry's findings will be handed down in March next year. Nelson Liu, WAMN News.
As a nationally promoted outlet for kids seeking a listening ear and encouraging advice, Kids Helpline is struggling to keep up with the sheer volume of calls. More financial support is needed by the state and federal governments, and Greens MPs believe this needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. Taylor Hanna explores this issue further.
While over 31,000 calls were made to Kids Helpline last year, more than half of those calls were dropped, the most dropped calls recorded since 2012. Other calls simply went unanswered. One of the biggest concerns is kids will be discouraged and won't continue to seek help.
When a phone call has been dropped, it means that someone's tried to ring through and they've been unsuccessful. That's a problem, because if we're setting up helplines and people are reaching out for the first time, it's really important that people are having the phone answered.
Alison Zamon said it's important to encourage a culture of people reaching out, particularly in children who go through a whole range of troubling issues. However, more funding is needed to boost Kids Helpline's ability to provide these services.
WA contributed just over $62,000, only making up 0.5% of the Helpline's total operational costs. Queensland is the only other state making contributions, with all the other states and territories failing to put any money forward.
We realise that the West Australian government is doing more than most of the other states, in fact much wealthier states than us, so they certainly need to be lifting their game, because it's their kids that are ringing through as well. It's early dollars for early intervention, and you save more money in the long run.
Taylor Hanna, WAMN News.
Prime Minister Scott Morrison has made his speech during the WA Liberal Party state conference this weekend. Following the Morrison government's miracle election victory in May this year, the PM addressed the party's MPs and delegates with words of encouragement.
It's not about us, it's about everybody out there. It's about your priorities out there. It's about your plans, it's about your aspirations, it's about your family, it's about your job, it's about the value of your home, the one you want to buy. It's about your community, it's about your freedom. It's not about us. And we will continue to be successful as a party when we focus on what's going on outside this room and not what's going on inside.
Asylum seekers in WA will receive a boost to their travel difficulties with access to concessions on public transport. It would be designed to lower the cost of travel, enabling asylum seekers to use more of their limited income to cover the basic cost of living. Michelle Bowie, Refugee Rights Action Network spokesperson, said public transport concessions for asylum seekers have been in states like Victoria and New South Wales for several years, so it's great to see it finally here in WA.
Cost of public transport is one of the factors that might result in isolation, social isolation, or prevent people from being able to access critical services. So I think this public transport concession is a really welcome development in that it might just make things a little bit easier for people who are already facing very difficult circumstances.
Regional Investigations Unit detectives are seeking information over an armed robbery at an East Perth supermarket. A man approached the counter and threatened staff with a knife before demanding cash. The offender left empty-handed as the staff refused to hand over any cash. Shortly after, the man was spotted in Elizabeth Quay, where he threatened a group of women for money, which, fearing for their safety, they handed over a small amount of money. Anyone who can identify the man is asked to call Crime Stoppers.
Newly elected UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that he wants to make Britain the greatest place on earth during his maiden speech to Parliament, echoing his US counterpart Donald Trump across the Atlantic Ocean. Mr Trump has previously called Mr Johnson a British version of himself. Mr Johnson said that he wanted UK to become Europe's largest economy by 2050 and promised to negotiate a new Brexit deal with the European Union. Thousands of protesters in Hong Kong have occupied the international airport in an attempt to raise awareness over recent unrest ignited by the controversial extradition bill. Police were criticised for its failure to protect citizens after at least 45 people were injured at a train station. The Chief Secretary Matthew Chung has apologised on behalf of government over the police force's poor response during the incident.
The National Constellation Cup has arrived in WA with Australia's top female netball team, the Samsung Diamonds, defending their 6th straight winning streak against the New Zealand Silver Ferns at the RAC Arena on Sunday. October 27th has been dubbed as the beginning of the biggest summer of women's sports in WA history, with the Tennis Federation Cup and T20 Cricket World Cup to follow. WA is currently leading the nation on the growth of interstate visitors, recording the highest growth rate in every category.
We're running some clinics. People will be able to meet their heroes and their role models. We're also providing some opportunities for coaches and officials. So really, at the end of the day, Netball WA, the Western Australian people and our athletes get to really ply their trade in their home backyard. And go Diamonds!
And that's our news for this week. We have the latest on our website and Facebook page.
Until 8 p.m. next Sunday, have a pleasant evening.
Good night.